My name is Rosie Snow. I'm the Director of Christian Discipleship at Wesley Memorial United Methodist Church, and the Discipleship Dispatches are back. My house is surrounded by a small grove of oak trees, and it is now the time of year that they are bestowing the acorns that they spent all spring and all summer growing. If you sit outside, you can hear them cracking loose from the trees and hitting the earth, almost like a slower, louder rain. Inside, there is the sharp plunk of an acorn hitting the roof, then sliding off every couple of minutes. You might be able to hear some of that in this video. I like this phenomenon because it takes me out of my head every time I hit one of these acorns hitting the roof or the ground. It's as though the trees were telling me, hey, snap out of it. Pay attention to us. I don't know what you're worried about, but we're over here bestowing enough acorns to create an entire forest. The oak trees also brought this year cinnabar chanterelles to our yard, accompanied by dozens of other mushrooms that I couldn't even identify. Like the acorns, the mushrooms have invited me to transcend my human world anxieties. Mushrooms spread through spores and fruit from mycelium, bounding into being from tiny invisible particles, springing up from decaying matter and helping to break it back down, pulling out chemical pollution, and then melting back into the earth as quickly as they came. They are like spirits that come and go, moving between the physical and the spiritual worlds, relaying messages back and forth, pointing us toward the thin places in our world and even in our own minds. They connect all of the earth underground with their silver threads, the original social network. And they bring me to wonder how much in our world also manifests from that which is too tiny to see, starting as particles, as dust in the ether, and then blooming into reality. The actuality and potentiality for everything in creation exist alongside each other, like dimensions laid over and through one another. How much is available to us as physical and sensing beings, yet remains hidden in plain sight? The acorns and the mushrooms invite us into this world of potentiality and multi-dimensionality, and so does Christ. Christ often describes the kingdom of heaven as blooming forth from something so tiny as to be invisible, like the tree from the mustard seed. Then, as now, we tend to reserve the bulk of our attention for the most obvious structures in our human world. And we let those structures define how we relate to life and our own spiritual health. Take the Supreme Court, since that is very much on people's minds right now. Very many people, including those who profess a Christian faith, have, with eyes wide open, made a deal with the devil to grab hold of a human-made institution that currently wields a lot of power in our world. All amounts of cruelty, dishonesty, and hypocrisy are acceptable if we can wield this structure to force policy that we think is correct, even when such actions in pursuit of power are what Jesus says we will be judged against. To those folks, I can only warn that bargains with the devil don't tend to work out. You experience the power you craved for a season, for a moment within the age, but then the consequences of what you broke to get there, of the evil you sowed to get there, catches up with you. And the very structure you sacrificed your soul for fails you. It dissolves below your feet. Many others are far too willing to give themselves over to doom and gloom because all they can see is that this structure, which currently wields great power in the current configuration of our world, has for a time been captured in order to cause great injustice and harm. Just like staring up at the crucified Christ, who seems permanently dead, it can be easy to feel powerless against the deadly structures of empire. But Jesus tells us that the power of human structures, like the cross or an undemocratically appointed Supreme Court, are inconsequential when held up against all things in heaven and earth. They loom large in our perceived actuality, but amount to nothing in the very real potentiality that exists right alongside. These structures are certainly not worth selling your soul for or handing over your hope for. Especially not if we are willing to engage in the multidimensionality that Jesus offers us, where the kingdom of heaven exists right alongside us, in tiny particles, seeds, spores, just ready to bound into being, where it is revealed that all of life is connected through love, as surely as mycelium connects all matter, living and dead, in the earth. Let Jesus snap you out of it, just as the plunking of an acorn snaps me out of my reverie. People are connecting out of solidarity in unprecedented ways across the globe. A global awakening to the evils of racism and colonialism and the way that our structures reflect them and uphold them is underway as never before. There is, perhaps for the first time in this connected world, a majority whose motivation is the healing of our humanity and the healing of our worth. And that motivation grows more irrepressible with every abuse of raw power that seeks to suppress it. As with the resurrection, often the moments that seem to affirm the worst are in fact giving way to the complete opposite. It is time to open our eyes to the potentiality that exists all around us, and by doing so, make it actuality. Amen.